Hey everybody, Steven here. Welcome to the Going Somewhere podcast. Before we jump into today's episode, I just got to tell you about one thing. Rhythm Conference 2024 is coming up on February 9th and 10th in Fargo, North Dakota at Northview Church. What Rhythm Conference is it's a 2-day gathering for young adults in their early 20s and early 30s. It's all about recognizing this complex season of life that many of you are in, and taking a step back and understanding, hey, what are the rhythms that I need to be healthy, to be whole, to love Jesus well in this season of life? So we're going to have guest speakers, worship experiences, after parties, some cool prizes, and a whole lot of fun along the way. So I want you to be there. Invite your friends. You can go to rhythmconf.com to learn more, or also to buy your tickets. It's $35 if you order before December 31st. Otherwise, tickets will go up to $50. So get them now, get them while they're hot. It's going to be an awesome time. Rhythm Conference, February 9th and 10th in Fargo. Want to see you there. But now it's time to go into this week's episode. Today, I am joined by Zach Wentz. Zach is the executive director of the AO1 Foundation, which is based out of Indie. If you know my story, you know that I worked for AO1 for 3 years. And so Zach is not only a good friend of mine, but he's also somebody who is my boss for a season of time. But I just love the work that AO1 does, the impact that they're making. If you didn't know this, Zach is Carson Wentz's older brother. He runs the foundation that Carson started after his rookie year. And today you're going to learn a little bit about that story, about the impact that they've made, and the journey along the way. So let's jump into today's episode with Zach Wentz. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Going Somewhere podcast. Today I'm joined by my friend and former boss, Zach Wentz. What's up, Zach?
It sounds funny, but it's good to be here.
Hey, I'm happy to have you here. I was just telling you, but when I made my list of people for the podcast, you were on that first list, and here we are, like 45 episodes later, you're getting on it. So congratulations.
I'm in before number 50. That's good.
Yeah, you're pre-50. You're pre-50. Well, hey, do you mind, for those of the listeners that don't know who you are, just kind of a little overview, who you are, where you're at, and what you're doing?
Yeah, 60 seconds, I'll do my best. So again, from Bismarck, North Dakota, born in Raleigh, North Carolina, was raised in Bismarck, attended Century High School, went to North Dakota State University, played baseball there, then met my wife in college. We moved to Bismarck. I taught PE, health, weight training, and coached baseball at Legacy High School, Century High School, Legion Baseball. And then kind of out of nowhere, my younger brother Carson kind of blew up and got drafted. Next thing you know, we hopped on a plane and moved our life to Philadelphia for 5 or 6 years. It was an incredible journey out there. And then moved to Indianapolis a few years ago, and now currently run Carson's nonprofit, the AO1 Foundation.
Hey, that was a great 60-second summary.
And we have 3 kids, 5, 3, and 2. Yep.
5, 3, and 2. Yeah. So our paths crossed. I mean, some people think our paths crossed when I started working for you, but our paths crossed when we were probably in 4th and 5th grade. Mm-hmm. playing baseball in Bismarck. Zach was like the legend even at that age. And I was just trying to make the team. You know, I was just trying to take up a spot at the end of the bench. So
that feels like forever. I haven't touched a baseball or a glove in forever. Maybe when my 2-year-old in a couple of years, I'll grab a glove and a ball again.
There you go. Kinsley is actually like obsessed with baseball, or like she loves playing baseball, hitting baseball. So I've gotten into it a little quicker than I thought I would. It's pretty fun.
There you go.
Yeah, we just a little context, obviously. Zach was my boss when I worked for AO1 for 3 years. And so it's kind of fun. We kind of went from strangers to having Carson in common to seeing each other every day and sharing a very small office space in Mullica Hill, New Jersey. But really, I just appreciate you, the man you are, the husband you are, the dad you are, the leader you are, and your path has been very unconventional. There's not a lot of PE teachers and coaches that jump into, hey, let's run $1 million nonprofit on the other side of the country. And so your path is a little bit unique, but I think I'm just excited to kind of dive into how that all unfolded. Because first of all, how did AO1 even come to be? For those that don't know the story, What was kind of like what led to AO1 existing in the first place?
Yeah, I think when Carson was a senior in college and traction kind of picked up for his post draft options, his football career picked up. We had conversations towards the end of that fall about. They started out very informal conversations about, how would I use my platform? What does that look like? I don't know if it's going to be a year or 5 years or 10 years or 20 years. Um, and in those conversations, you talk to his agents a little bit about, what does it look like to start a nonprofit, to start a 501c3, to have a charitable organization. Uh, and most of the advice he got was maybe just wait until a few years down the road before you get your feet wet. There's going to be a lot of new things to transition to the NFL already. And for those that know Carson, he kind of said, okay, I'll listen to like most of that. And then some of that I'm just going to kind of do my own way. So he waited a little bit, waited till after his first year of playing. So we moved out there when he got drafted. At that time, it was just him. I was kind of helping him some off-field stuff left and right. Life was a blur. My wife and I were both helping him with that. But knowing that in the near future, that nonprofit charitable organization side of things was going to come out, and started it right after his rookie year, and just kind of been slowly transitioning and evolving and building into what we are today.
What did it start as? Like when you guys originally were like, okay, what do we do? We want a nonprofit. We want to help. We want to give back. But now what do we do? What were kind of those first things that came out?
Yeah, it was a different model then. We were more of a grant writing organization early because I was the only, quote unquote employee. So we were raising funds, and we were writing grants to other nonprofits. We weren't running any programs ourselves. It was a little bit of a different model. We didn't have a lot of the paperwork. We were under another umbrella organization, but we did a lot of work with dogs, with service dogs. For most that know, Carson is a dog fanatic. They have 3 and probably more here soon. So we were doing some work with some service dog organizations where we were providing funds for them to train dogs and to assign them with different owners. We were doing some different grants for those in the outdoor space. So similar to what we do now in the outdoor ministry, but we were doing those types of grants for other organizations. And then there were a couple other just odds and ends ones with local hospitals, local organizations with medically disadvantaged children. So we were kind of grant writing organization, and about 2019, 2020, that kind of shifted to running more of our own programming.
Yeah, I know some of like the original like AO1 stuff that we would have is it had the dog stuff on it, and so it's kind of fun. That was the pre me coming on staff and stuff. But where did faith kind of play into that, and how did faith kind of make some of those decisions for you? Because I think there was a point, I think, for both of you guys that you're like, well, if we're going to do this, we want it to be based on our faith. And so how did that kind of come out?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think through a lot of the grant writing process of AO1, when we originally started, that was the hardest part for us to navigate a little bit, was just navigating who are we partnering with, because we want this to be deeper than a surface level gift. We want this to be something that's going to impact people's eternities and give them something eternal. And so that was the biggest internal struggle for us was, yes, this organization is doing great, but we think we can be doing great, but also offering something eternal through it as well. So we wrestled with that internally. We wrestled with that kind of with God, to be honest. Like, is this the right avenue you have for us? And eventually, like I said, in 2019, we said, I at that point had done it for like a year and a half. And I'm like, I think I know enough. I don't know it all, but I know enough where we can, do our own stuff, set up our own 501c3, get our own tax determination letter, file it all with the IRS. So now that under our paperwork and under our umbrella, we can control how we spend funds. We can control the messaging behind it. Yes, we want to provide, amazing experiences through our ministries. We want to still point people to Jesus through it. We don't have to be, really shy about it or hide from it. We want to point people to Jesus through it.
That's cool. And my first exposure to AO1, like in the grand scheme of things, was camp. I was in Hawaii on vacation with my family. My wife was, 5 months pregnant, and you guys called and said, would you help us with the camp? And I think back to some of those original conversations, and, I think it was kind of like, all right, what's the plan? And it was kind of like, yeah, what is it? What should we do? And it was just a blank canvas. And of course, we had lots of stress moments. We had like 16 kids signed up with like a week or two before
Hmm.
camp.
Yeah.
Like, this is going to be crazy. We have 16 counselors, 16 kids. And but obviously like God came through, and different partners that kind of came out of nowhere. And what we kind of set out for that first camp, I remember just kind of feeling like a little overwhelmed, a little over our heads, but God just kind of blew our socks off. And what role did that play for you? I've always thought back to that. Like for me, obviously that was a big turning point. That was when conversations kind of kicked off about what would employment look like and moving
Hmm.
across the country. And it was really like a pretty game changing event in our life. But for you guys, that was probably the first big thing, like
Yeah.
ministry wise, that you guys did. So how did that kind of turn your wheels? What was kind of that like for you?
Yeah, I think it just allows you to kind of see the vision come to fruition a little bit and just see kind of the where you wanted it to go and what you thought the organization could become and could do. It saw it come to fruition. Again, there were a lot of moments leading up to that where I'm like, this isn't going to go well. I thought it was going to go well, and it wasn't going well. But um, I tell people a lot of times, a lot of leadership to me is, yes, there's setting culture and setting expectations, but a lot of it is building relationships and getting the right people and hiring the right people and people that are on board, that are all in with you. And that's, what I found through that is we found good people, and their heart is for that, is for these kids and for the outdoor space and for camp. And that's been the biggest difference in kind of the growth and trajectory that whole thing has been on over the last 3-4 years.
For sure. I was just I got to speak at your guys's retreat for the senior hires. And it was really special because I actually pulled up, which I probably shouldn't have access to, but I pulled up their original like approval letters from when they applied for camp in 2018. I found it, um, and I was looking at one of the girls as I had her thing, and she was 13 years old, and it had her whole, not like her records, but it had kind of like she's afraid of camp. This is her first time away from camp. And then I looked across at her, and she was one of our counselors, and it was just kind of like a full circle of like what happens when three dudes or four dudes at that time just kind of say, hey, let's do a camp. Hey, do you have camp experience? No. Do you?
Yeah.
No. Let's just do it and see what
Yeah.
happens. And just to see the fruit of it, I get to see that every summer when I get to go back. And it's really special to me to see what it is now, knowing where it came from. And I can only imagine how proud you guys are. But for those that don't know kind of what the AO1 ministry and outdoor ministry is, do you mind just kind of giving kind of that overview? And I want to hear it in this way. I want to hear, okay, what is it today? And what did you think it was going to be 5 years ago?
Goodness. Yeah, what is it today? So the outdoor ministry is really comprised of two arms. So we have our Camp Conquerors, which is a roughly a week-long summer camp for kids with various diverse medical backgrounds, both past and present. And currently this year for the first time, we had a full middle school camp. Plus, we had a full high school camp. We had over 100 kids from the region, mainly North Dakota, some Minnesota, some South Dakota, but mainly all lumped into that region. Next year, we're excited. We're going to have a third camp. So we continue to kind of push the envelope there on the Camp Conqueror side. Again, like Steven said, the camp side of things is also growing. We did a fall retreat this year for the first time for our senior high kids. Really just enables us to have continuous touch points with these kids and continually pouring into them throughout their adolescent years. So much can change from one summer to the next, and we want to make sure that we can't disciple all these kids. That's not what we don't think we're called to do that or equipped to do that, but we can still make an impact with them. And I know our staff has, because our kids continue to come back. The other arm there is our Mountain Movers program, which is taking those same type of kids on different, we call world-class, memorable trip of their lifetime hunting, fishing, camping trip excursion. So we kind of have a set schedule, some trips that we like to do, but we also work with the kids and the families and pair what they want to do with what we have available. For example, whether it's a salmon fishing trip, an elk hunt, a mule deer hunt, an antelope hunt, going deep sea fishing, we try to pair those kids with options that we have. And then we take those kids completely free of charge. We'll fly them around the country. We'll do the taxidermy. We'll do the meat processing for those kids. And The outdoors is the means by which we do it. But on all those trips, we're doing devotionals. We're using those car rides to pour into those kids to remind them of who they are. We're digging deeper. The kids are putting their phone aside, where we can ask them questions, engage with them beyond just surface level conversations about kind of their past, what their friends are doing at school, what they're doing at school, what they think of themselves, especially in an era where technology is so present. It's easy for kids just in terms of self-esteem to be so low at times. And so we want to really just use those times to pour into them and remind them of who the Word of God says they are as people. So that's what the outdoor ministry looks like now. A few years ago, I thought we were just going to take some kids on some trips and have some hunts, and I wasn't sure what was going to happen after that. But we're like, we're going to do this and we're going to do it well. And it slowly just evolved into a continual, pouring into these kids' life from 13 years old. So like you said, those kids who are quote unquote graduating out of our programming are coming back to be counselors, to 18-year-old kids that give their stamp of approval to our organization.
Yeah, that's cool. I think Amy is one of those that's become a counselor, and she was kind of like the first one to go from camper to counselor. And I think the family aspect of it, like she is somebody that I see in Fargo now, and I feel more like family than like, oh, I was your camp director back in the day or whatever the case was. But like this weekend, Cole and Lexi, who lead your outdoor ministry, they're doing Christmas parties in Bismarck and in Fargo, bringing all the kids together. I feel like that aspect of it kind of met a need in a lot of the kids that we didn't even realize, of just like how those situations, I guess, what did you learn, as you did it each step of the way, and, empowered other people to do it? What did you learn about the kids that kind of drew you to like, hey, this is the all in place, and you have multiple arms of AO1, but this is the one that we want to stick to it?
Well, I think, being there and being present, and seeing camp and talking to the kids there and just understanding, just seeing their walls really break down and seeing how usually hesitant kids are early, the first half day, the first day, but then seeing how engaged they are and how tight of a community gets developed at the end of the week, was a real reassurance. Hearing kids' testimonies during small group amongst each other was just another, check mark that said, yeah, we're going in the right direction. And, there's just I think there's just a need. It's hard to put it into words. The needs evolve year by year for these kids, but I think as they grow and mature, we've just seen that a continual pouring into on a frequent basis as much as we can to be a resource and a mentor and someone they can go to. And just the stories that the kids and the parents tell us. I mean, they're our biggest advocates, is the kids and their parents. And someone asked me, how do you know it's working? I said, well, like 75% of our kids come back and their parents want them to come back. And the parents are over the moon to be like, man, I really needed this. I needed a week, just a break from just the stress that we've been under, as a family. And so their testimonies and their stories, and they keep coming back. And it's not reluctantly coming back. They're coming back because they want to be there.
Yeah. I think that, just this weekend, you're going to have kids that will have convinced their parents to drive them 5 hours in the middle of a North Dakota winter to go have a bowling night or whatever it is, with their A1 family. And I think that's pretty significant. And I don't pass over that. Like, I get to see a lot of different ministries. I get to see a lot of different expressions of ministry in the church and out of the church. And you don't always see what's taken place with AO1 take place. You mentioned, you're talking about your leadership style. How would you define your leadership style?
Boy. I always tell people I don't ever intend or desire to be, overbearing, micromanaging. I want to be one that empowers and encourages, but also has an ability to, correct at times when there's need for correction. And as we've grown, as we've added staff, we've added people, those have had to be more frequent. When it was just me plus one or me plus two, like I didn't have to worry about that. But as we grow, you have to really think about, how do I want to lead? Well, I set expectations, we set standards, we go over kind of the goals, objectives we're trying to accomplish, and try to empower staff to to do it, to take care of it of their own, but know that I'm there as a resource and a reference as needed. And then if there's times, I've learned the last few years that it's not always sunshines and rainbows. There needs to be some conversations that are hard, initially. They're not fun in the moment. You stress yourself out way more leading into them. And a lot of times in those conversations, things take care of themselves in the moment, and people are usually on the same wavelength already. So I like to empower. I like to be hands off as best I can and really just enable them to do the job that they've been called to do.
How do you feel like your sports background has played into and shaped your leadership style?
I think my background in sports has shaped probably a lot of my background, as a, high school athlete to, as a sophomore at NDSU with an older team. And I was one of the 3 voted team captains as a sophomore. And I think from a lot of those older guys was just noticing the work ethic and noticing the commitment I have to it. And understanding that when I do speak, that it's valid and it's reliable and it's important. It's not, I don't just speak just to speak and hear myself. I really truly believe that, there's power in the words that we say. And I try to be diligent and think through all my conversations that I have before I say them. And so I think people understand when I do speak or I do have a correction that it's coming from the right place and that it's valid. So, and that's really just brought up through sports, playing quarterback and then, playing every position on the baseball field and being a team captain and having to give speeches and talk to the team as a whole about academics or going to class or expectations on the road trips. Like I've just been in front of people a lot, and I think people value and see the humility that I hopefully carry.
No, for sure. And I think that's a cool summary of it. And when I was working with AO1, our work environment was a lot of people that played sports, whether collegiately or high school. And I felt like when I've talked to different people about different work experiences, I felt like that shared chemistry or that shared history made things different. And you're like a coach at heart. Like you're not like the hoorah, like cheerleader coach. You're like the fundamentals. Here's the goal. Let's get it done and let's figure out a way. And I think in what AO1 is and what it has been, like, I think that's been a cool thing to observe both up close and from afar is you're really stewarding something, obviously like you're setting the tone, but also Carson's heart and vision is stamped on literally everything, including like t-shirt designs that we've had over the years. Like he and Maddie have put their heart and soul into it. They just can't put their time into it. And so when it comes to that stewardship piece, how have you kind of dealt with both the relational tension that brings? Like, this is my brother's legacy too. Like if this thing goes down burning, you can just kind of sail off into the sunset, where he wears it, like his name's on it. So how is that part kind of played into your leadership?
Yeah. And I think most people that know me, it's hard for me to do anything like with 1 foot in and 1 foot out. When we started this, I was like, all right, this is
Hunting, golf.
Yeah. Yeah. Like this is it. Like I'm going to give it what I can, and I'm going to try to be an open book of knowledge and just lean into other people who have done this before and soak up as much as I can. But, I'll be honest, it's something I struggle with at times is just, looking towards the future, looking ahead, and just figuring out, okay, how are we going to get there? What is this going to look like? And it's something I still struggle with today. I love where we are today. If I look back now, 3 years ago, I'd be ecstatic to be where we are today, but something that I just fight every day is just looking ahead and, searching for answers and trying to figure out, okay, well, this is how we've done in the past. Is this what we're going to do going forward? Knowing that I want this to be sustainable, it's no longer, just me and Carson. There's other people that work for the organization. There's other families involved. There's other kids involved. There's people that we serve that are involved, not just our staff. So it's something that weighs on me, more now than it did before, because it was just Carson and I. And now there's other people and other strings attached to it as well. So something that I wrestle with, something I have to surrender honestly every day because I can't control it all. But it's something that I'm working through and trying to surrender every day.
That's cool. I think you are in a unique place, and maybe not unique in the world that that you guys are close to, because a lot of players have nonprofits, a lot of players work with their family on those projects and stuff. But I think from the outside looking in, it's a very unique place to be, where you're carrying out something in your brother's name and doing it with the integrity that you do it and the leadership that you do it with. But I've always wondered, like, that there is that pressure piece, like, who do you have Thanksgiving with and Christmas with? Your brother, but also the guy that's leading the organization. So I think that's a unique factor to it that's really cool. But I feel like I would be, doing a disservice if I didn't ask a few things just about the football thing, because that's also been a unique part of, your world. The roller coaster. Did you think that doing a nonprofit and doing everything that you've been doing would be affected by football the way that it is? Like, that's been kind of a funny thing.
Yeah, I mean, I assumed it would, but you don't really ever know until it happens. It's like insurance. You're like, if something's gonna happen to the car or the house, but like you don't really know what's gonna happen until it happens. And then how does it what happens after that? So I knew there'd be roller coasters and ebbs and flows. Maybe not to like the extremes
Well, you had,
over the last
yeah,
like
because you
4 years
had
where it's been like so high to so low to in the middle to like the next day being so low to so like I didn't expect that. It's been it certainly has helped me and my family grow. I know we're often kind of curious as to why, but yeah, I knew there'd be ebbs and flows. I didn't know it maybe as highs and lows as it's been the last probably 4 or 5 years on the football side.
For sure. Well, and you had 2017, the first year of the foundation. Carson wins, the Eagles win the Super Bowl, and all attention. And I mean, you guys could breathe and money would come at you. And, and then you also had 2020, both COVID and the way the season turned out. And what have you learned from maybe navigating? Because I think that's something that young adults face across the board, no matter what the stakes are, no matter what, their work is or whatever, but they experience high moments and low moments. So what has helped you get through kind of that roller coaster effect of some days are really great and everything seems to fall into place, and sometimes things can go any worse and I don't know what to do?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. It was a roller coaster from that little bit there, but um, I think throughout that, I wrestled a little bit like as a foundation, not personally, but like who are we as a foundation? Do we need to like conform to like what others are doing? Do we need to be different because there's now like public perception or public pressure or on Carson or his image, or like how do we improve Carson's image? Can we improve Carson's image through the work we're doing as a foundation? And something I just wrestled with personally throughout that little season. But um, we obviously didn't change who we were. We stayed true to who we were as an organization, which is a reflection of who we are as people. And, just kind of said, this is who we are. And this is who God has called us to be in this season and how he's called us to help and assist. And if things need to be, manipulated and worked around differently because resources are different now than they were 3 years ago, that's okay. But we're not going to change who we are as an organization because of that. So, no different than most people with peer pressure or public perception, we wrestled with a lot of that internally. Like, who are we? What are we doing? How can I maybe assist Carson's legacy as a football player through the foundation? Do we change it? And ultimately the answer was no. But just conforming to the world, that verse about conforming to the world is something that I wrestled with a lot about. Where do you want us to be, God, and what do you want us to do? And ultimately we just tried to stay true to who we were and who we felt God's called us to be in that season.
So what you're saying is that the world doesn't like pictures of dead animals on Instagram?
It's not their favorite.
It's not
It's not their favorite. Like the stuff with kids and stuff is all great, but then, when you show the hunting side of things, it's not great. But, most that understand and kind of read some of that stuff understand that it's way beyond that. I mean, the hunting and outdoor stuff is so surface level. And there's so many times when it's unsuccessful, and that's just fine. And the kids and the families are still, impacted far beyond a hunt or a fishing trip.
For sure. One of the things I was going to ask was kind of with the football thing. You've lived in Well, two different places since it all. You guys didn't go to Washington, but um, tell me about just living in Philly and just kind of that culture. Like, what was that experience like? Because obviously, when you grew up, and you're 18 years old and you're going to NDSU, you're like, I think in a few years we should move to Philly. Like that's where I want to end up. But what was kind of that like? And just with that, you and Andie have moved. You've lived in several different houses. Like you've
Mhm.
kind of gone where you need to go and done what you need to do. And so, what was that like? Just establishing your marriage, your life, and then just living in some different, unique places.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we never would have guessed that's where we would have ended up, of course. But the first few years living out there, we were lived about 30 minutes outside of Philadelphia in semi-rural New Jersey, as rural as you can get down there. But as a newly married couple, at that time it was great. To be honest, we were able to get to the city to go to dinner. We were able to be, a train ride, a 60-minute train ride from New York City. We were able to be, 60 to 90 minutes from DC. We did Boston for a weekend. Like as a newly married young couple, that was great. Food was great. We didn't live in the city. We didn't live in the city, so we were rural enough where it wasn't bogged down with traffic everywhere. So that was great. Obviously as family grew and we had Sutton out there, I could see how maybe raising a family out there would be a little more difficult. You look at um, just school systems, and it's so unique out there between public and private, and athletics and academics out there is so much more prep school and so much more unique on that
Right.
side of things than it is, where we grew up. But yeah, we really enjoyed it. Moving to Indianapolis it kind of felt like a nice happy medium between the big city amenities of the East Coast, but also kind of our core Midwest values, having the seasons, having what we think Indianapolis is, Midwestern people, having the amenities to go hunting and fishing all around us as well. Found a good church, found a good place to get plugged in, good friends that we're obviously friends with still today. So it seemed to be it is a good fit. Happened to move into the first house that kind of came on the market at that time. Like, and we're still here. And that is a win as well. So yeah, it was great out there early. I'm happy to raise a family here as opposed to probably there.
I get that for sure. But I do think, yeah, you kind of did. I kind of forgot about that because when we moved out, we had Kinsley already and we were expecting Summit. And so we were kind of like getting our bearings and kind of getting settled, navigating life in a new place with young kids. But you guys had that other whole side of that experience where you did get to kind of do all those things out there. And that is the thing that I think about the most. Like I was 4 hours from Boston, an hour and a half from DC, and just the uniqueness when you grow up in Fargo, North Dakota. If you're listening to this and you live not in the Midwest, this doesn't make sense to you. But
Yeah.
when your closest sports team is the Minnesota Twins and the Vikings 4 hours away,
Uh-huh.
you get excited about these things.
Yeah.
But
I mean, even here in Indy, even in Indy, we're 2 hours from Chicago. We're like an hour and a half from Cincinnati. We're 4 hours from St. Louis. 4.5 hours from Nashville. I mean, those are all. We were 6, 7 hours from Minneapolis growing up, and that was like, yeah, big city. And I'm like, we're kind of surrounded by stuff everywhere here. So it's kind of nice to have all the amenities, but also feel like you're in the area you want to be.
for sure, for sure. As we kind of wrap this up, one of the things I wanted to ask is there anything, over the last 5 years that you've kind of looked at, just what you've gotten to be a part of with the foundation or just with family, whatever, that you're most proud of, that you would say like, man, this is the thing, or a couple of things that really stand out that I'm really proud to be a part of it?
Oh, you know, gosh, that's a good question. I hope that if you talk to people who know me, I hope that they would say that even, former colleagues when I taught that my character, my personality hasn't changed from when I was there, when I was, 24, 25. I would hope that they would still have a conversation with me and say like your character, your personality, your humility hasn't changed from when you were here. You've done a lot in your life, but your character hasn't changed. And I would hope that would be, the messaging. that's something I strive for.
That's cool. I mean, from my vantage point, I think that's true. So I think that counts. But last question, I ask everybody on the podcast, but if you were to go face to face with like 22, 23-year-old Zach, what's one piece of advice you would give him?
22, 23. So at that point, I would have probably been just finishing college, probably searching for what I'm going to do with my life. Maybe just took a teaching job. And I still struggle with this. I mentioned it earlier. I would tell that version of Zach to be as present as possible in the moment. Like I struggle with, I could remember almost pitch by pitch sequence what I threw or what, when I was hitting, like what someone threw to me, like certain at bats in my career. And yet there's moments as like a family man or a husband or a father where they're like gray. And I don't know if that's because I was clouded with other thoughts or other things that were in my mind, that I was distracted from moments that I should have been engaged in. And so I would tell that version of me to be as present as possible and don't worry about things that are coming down the road.
That's deep. That was good. That might be like a top 5 answer, Zach.
Well, inside the top 50 episodes, so that's going to be the top 10%.
Exactly. Oh man, no, that's really good. I think that's valuable for anybody that's listening. I mean, because I do think like life goes fast. I mean, even just thinking from 2018 to 2023, just this 5 years that our paths crossed, it's quite significant what's changed and what's different and who I am as a person compared to then. And yeah, that's powerful. And I think that's the other thing too, is you guys have kind of embodied this too, but you can't always predict what's coming around the corner. And you guys maybe more than others have kind of been on the whim of other people's decisions in some regards. Like when Carson got traded to the Colts, you didn't get to call a meeting and be like, hey, have we considered other options? I would like to go back to Minnesota to be closer. And I think you guys have handled that well. So good stuff.
Yeah, appreciate you having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I know what you guys are doing is significant. How can people kind of catch? I know you're not the biggest on social media, but how can they catch just AO1? And I know some people don't know, but if you're a hunter, fisherman, the Wentz Bros Outdoors stuff is really cool. I'm not like the biggest. I was the one outlier on the team, but what you guys do is really sweet. You guys do a great job with it. So how can people find what you're doing?
Yeah, so AO1Foundation.org, our website. Follow us on social media. Not the one doing it. We also have an AO1 Outdoor Ministry Instagram page that I'm slowly running, actually doing that one, just trying to bulk that up a little bit and just kind of tell the story of the outdoor ministry and some of the stuff we're doing there. So yeah, A1 Foundation on social media, our website. I do think it's something that we're really going to try to press into in that region, in that upper Midwest region, of really storytelling. We're going to try to do 2 events there this year, try to do one in Fargo and in Bismarck, to just tell people the work that we're doing. I think there's a lot of people that still live there that don't understand the work that Carson and myself and our whole staff are doing for kids in that region. And so yeah, follow us there. And then I guess Wentz Bros Outdoors, I get to do that in my spare time, which is fun. I get to hunt and tell stories and document that. I hope it's serious and lighthearted and engaging, whether you like that space or not. YouTube, Wentz Bros Outdoors, and Instagram as well, and maybe you'll see me on there.
Hey, that's good. When does Wentz Bros Golf start? When does that channel come?
Carson would have stayed a free agent all year. I think he would have probably started in December or January at this point, but we pushed it off for another year.
You're saying live tour wasn't knocking yet?
Well, we have to be presentable before we start putting it on the internet. And we're gonna be like the duck left and a slice to the right and mixing a fairway. It'd be ugly.
That's relatable content. That's what I'm all about. Well, hey, thanks for jumping on. Appreciate you. Thanks for listening, everybody.